Ave Maria Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I'm a priest of the Legions of Christ and I teach theology. This is a podcast on the Star Quest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 33. We're going over Sacro Sanctum Concilium 116 to 121 on the elements for making and singing liturgical music. This is the second and last one on the liturgical music, the sacred music, which is chapter 6 of Sacro Sanctum Concilium. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details, sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthew.lc.com/Vatican. Yesterday we talked about the value of the music in the liturgy and the need to promote liturgical music. Here we're going to talk about different aspects of music, from the value of Gregorian chant, the value of people singing, and the question about instruments and compositions. And it is a little longer text, I think. I think we have a little more text today, but these paragraphs are pretty straightforward and not too complicated. So I'll go right in and we'll give a brief explanation. The explanations won't be that long today. So paragraph 116 is on Gregorian chant and other styles of singing. Let's read it. The Church acknowledges Gregorian chant as specially suited to the Roman liturgy. Therefore, other things being equal, it should be given pride of place in liturgical services. But other kinds of sacred music, especially polyphony, are to be by no means excluded from liturgical celebration, so long as they accord with the spirit of liturgical actions laid down in Article 30. So that's the text. Article 30 was quoted last time, but we'll quote again. To promote active participation, people should be encouraged to take part by means of acclamations, responses, psalmody, antiphons, and songs. So this is the encouragement of others, right? So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about other kinds of music, right? But the important thing here is that there's a priority of Gregorian chant, right? It is given pride of place. It is not just something, maybe not. No, it is, given pride of place. It's not absolute, because we'll talk about that in the second part of the description, but it's given pride of place. This is a venerable tradition. It goes back to, it's named after Gregory I, who was Pope 590 to 604. So about 1400 years ago, and it goes back in there, and it's often called plain chant. It's a very simple, there's just a melody, no harmony, just like a single set of music. It doesn't quite use modern timing, like, 4/4, 6/8, things like that, 3/4. It uses a 2/3 timing, which is like either 2 or 3 beats, and each one would be probably equivalent to about a quarter beat in modern notation, but they don't have that. It's just, they have the single and double beats. I guess you also have triple beats in a few of them, right? And it's a beautiful type of singing. It's very moving towards the religious, towards prayer and contemplation. There are some that are done in English and not just Latin, but obviously this has the historical one is mainly Latin, but I forget which one of the Benedictine monasteries in the U.S. One of the monks did some very beautiful versions of these in Latin. And obviously it mentions not just Gregorian chant. It talks about polyphony, which is where you have that harmony, different people singing different things. Polyphony is often also referred to as the ones where they're singing at different times. If you ever had Palestrina or things like that, where like Agnus Dei, Agnus Dei, and they're all singing at the same time. Agnus Dei being Lamb of God, one of the parts of Mass, right? And modern styles can be added, but it's that idea of noble simplicity, that idea of, does this music move me to prayer, move me to contemplation, move me to worship, or does this music move me to focus on the singer, in which case it's probably not good for Mass. Paragraph 117 is about making Gregorian chant books. It's really quick. Let's just read it and briefly comment. The typical edition of the books of Gregorian chant is to be completed, and a more critical edition is to be prepared. Of those books already published, it's the restoration by St. Pius X. It is desirable also that edition be prepared containing simpler melodies for the use in small churches. This was a desire of the council for a typical edition, right? I had to search this up because I didn't know if it was fulfilled. I did find Ordo Cantus Missae Editio Typica Altera from 1988. So the order of Mass chants, the very typical edition from 1988. It should be more widely distributed. I don't know if that's meant to be the simpler one as the altered one, the Altera, the alternative, or that's meant to be the more complicated one, but that idea of having standardized ones. There are some standardized ones. If you get a lot of the English missals, they'll have like the Pater Noster, Our Father, they'll have a chant for that. The Latin Missal has chants for all the Mass parts and has variations for the Gloria, the Creed, and things like that. And that's very beautiful. And there's noble simplicity, right? We don't want these Alleluia where you stay on the Yah for a minute or something, right? In that sense. There are some Gregorian chants that get long, and that's why I simplified for smaller churches, because I know some of the ones we sang in the seminary were very in that direction. I don't think we get all the way there, but that's an important thing. So paragraph 118 is about the people singing. Let's read it. Religious singing by the people is to be intelligently fostered so that in devotions and sacred exercises, as long as also during the liturgical services, the voice of the faithful may ring out according to the norms and requirements of the rubrics. That's all. Pretty straightforward. People should sing, right? And not just the choir, not just the cantor, right? And there's a value of repeated songs or using the same melody for the Holy, Holy, Holy every Sunday, right? Little kids, they get to know it because, hey, we've seen this every Sunday, and they couldn't read the music, but they've heard this every Sunday for the last 2 years, and now they can sing with the choir, right? Sing with the community, right? And don't be embarrassed about it. And sometimes you only sing part of it. I know there's the famous Mr. Bean short where Mr. Bean's singing, and he only knows the refrain because he couldn't find the right page. So whenever they get to the refrain, he's like da 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 da, and he's singing out loud. But then when it's not the refrain, he's like kind of like looking down and not really singing, right? And that is sometimes the value also there, that you can sing the refrain, and we might not be able to sing every single verse, but even just singing the refrain helps us to get our mind into that active participation. If you want to look up Mr. Bean singing at church, it's kind of funny. It's obviously, I think it's supposed to be Anglican, not Catholic, but it's close enough. Anyways, paragraph 119 is local adaptation and the idea that music can be adapted according to traditions of local cultures. In certain parts of the world, especially mission lands, there are people who have their own musical traditions, and these play a great part in their religious and social life. For this reason, due importance is to be attached to their music, and a suitable place to be given to it, not only in forming their attitude towards religion, but also in adapting worship to their native genius, as indicated in Article 39 and 40. Therefore, when missionaries are being given training in music, every effort should be made to see that they become competent in promoting the traditional music of these peoples, both in schools and in sacred services as far as may be practicable. So that's the idea. Articles 39 and 40 about local adaptation, what can be approved by bishops versus what can be approved by the Vatican. So pretty straightforward as why it would be relevant here, why they're referencing it. You can think of things like, I don't know if you've ever seen The Mission. There's a scene where he goes up and he starts singing the flute, playing the flute or the oboe. The music is called Gabriel's oboe, but I think he's actually playing more of a flute than an oboe. But the idea is that he's attracting these people through the beauty of music without words, right? And that's the idea, right? There's some masses, if you go to some Native American tribes and the mass on their, on the reservation or whatever else in Canada and the US, they will have drums, like the big kind of drums that they'd use for dancing. They'll have those as part of the welcoming to mass or things like that. And that is that idea of here we are welcoming using the traditional music, right? And it's adapted. It's approved by the bishop or bishop's conference and things like that. It's not traditional to have if you ever seen the boom, boom, the big drums that, they'll often have 3-4 people pounding on them and they vibrate through the whole building, that are common in like Native American dance, especially up in the plains, Great Plains area where I grew up. That could be helpful, right? And different styles are not intrinsically good or bad, right? They can be used for worship. Some of them are not appropriate, because of how they're used, right? For example, a lot of pop music styles, especially romantic styles, like if styles just romantic or a style, EDM dance, electronic dance music. I can't see a use for that in the mass because what is that music about? It's about moving your body, right? If you want to listen to that music while you work out, great. If you want to listen to that music, and dance to it, it's fine. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that, but it's just not appropriate for mass. Whereas, a kind of more methodical music that's more dedicated to those type of things works better in mass. And don't try and do fake enculturation. One of the things that sometimes bothers me is when people who are not part of that culture try and do this fake enculturation. My ancestors, they're all European. My ancestors, German, Scottish, Irish, basically. 1/16 is a whole mix of other, of multiple other nationalities. But 16ths of those three nationalities. That's all European. So, I might have Germanic Celtic traditions in the past, but I'm not going to say like, hey, the traditions of this Native American tribe, I'm going to appropriate them, right? That's the fake enculturation. I grew up and I've lived my whole life in Canada and the US. Basically, I studied in Rome and things like that. And I understand this culture and I feel comfortable in this culture. And the music we have in general and mass is often good for this culture. And I'm not here to judge like what's the best for this tribe in Africa. I'm like, well, like talk to the bishops and the priests there and the people who know the tribe. I don't know that tribe, and things like that. But anyways, we're going to move on to 120 with instruments and the priority that gives the organ, which is an important thing. That the church gives a priority to the organ as an instrument for liturgical music. So let's read it. In the Latin church, the pipe organ is to be held in high esteem, for it is the traditional musical instrument, which adds a wonderful splendor to the church's ceremonies and powerfully lifts up man's mind to God and to higher things. But other instruments may also be admitted for the use in divine worship, with knowledge and consent of their competent territorial authority, as laid down Article 22.2, 37, and 40. This may be done, however, only on a condition that the instruments are suitable or can be made suitable for sacred use, according to the dignity of the temple, and truly contribute to the edification of the faithful. So that's the number. There's several articles here. Article 22.2 is about the Holy See has authority over 22 is about the Holy See having authority over the liturgy, and 22.2 is about how they concede some to bishops' conferences. 37 is about not rigid uniformity. 40 is adaptation of the liturgy. I'm 95% sure there is a typo in the English here, because it actually says 22, 52. That 5, I think, is supposed to be the kind of paragraph symbol. It looks like two S's combined together. It looks vaguely like a 5. Because that's what it is in other languages. I double checked multiple other languages and had that. And 52 is about that we have a homily every Sunday. So it doesn't make sense in this context. So I'm pretty sure it's just supposed to be the paragraph marker for 22.2. So if you read that and you're like, why didn't he mention 52? That's why, because I'm pretty sure it's a typo. And there's that priority to the organ, the pipe organ. Sometimes you have other organs in the churches. I knew a parish I grew up in, we had I don't know what they call it, just an organ. Didn't have the pipes sticking out or anything. I'm not sure exactly what they used for it, but it was an organ. And there's a beauty to that, right? And obviously the church is not saying absolutely you have to all do it exactly this way. And there are some in other Western tradition, there's a violin, oboe, piano, things like that. And there's some in other traditions, right? But there's important to keep the liturgical sense not become a performance, right? As you get like a bigger band, the temptation to turn the liturgical music into that performance is a challenge. And we always have to maintain that it's liturgical music, not a performance. So paragraph 121, our last paragraph for this chapter for today, is about composers. Composers filled with the Christian spirit should feel their vocation is to cultivate sacred music and increase its store of treasures. Let them produce compositions which have the qualities proper to genuine sacred music, not confine themselves to works which can be sung only by large choirs, but providing also for the needs of small choirs and for the active participation of the entire assembly of the faithful. The texts intended to be sung must always be in conformity with Catholic doctrine. Indeed, they should be drawn chiefly from Holy Scripture and from liturgical sources, right? So that's the guidance to composer. There's a vocation, right? It's part of the tradition, the Star of Heaven. It's building it up. It's not just creating all anew, but it's building up, right? That's why it talks about the end about, hey, use the Bible, paraphrase a psalm or use verses from a psalm, or, the liturgy, take elements from the liturgy, take elements from Catholic doctrine, right? And that's important, right? It's properly sacred music, not just profane music that has sacred themes. Like there's a joke about some Protestant, the evangelical kind of Christian rock. It's like, could you replace Jesus with like my love or my girlfriend or something, right? And that's not really liturgical music if you can't. It's got to be liturgical in that, beyond that sense, right? And that noble simplicity, right? Making the music accessible as well. So you don't need like this choir with 20 voices or something like that. But hopefully that is helpful there. So let's close up. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help StarQuest produce another great podcast at skpn.com/give. You can give one time, monthly, or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, we're going to continue the next paragraphs. We're going to start a new chapter of Sacrosanctum Concilium. Chapter 7 on sacred art, which is the last chapter, and we'll cover paragraphs 122 and 123 on the value of sacred art. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information about the podcast, such as playlists for individual documents and a reading plan.